I solemnly swear that I am up to no good.
Messrs. Mooney, Wormtail, Padfoot and Prongs are proud to present the Marauder's Map.
If you succeed tonight, more than one innocent life may be spared.
Expecto Patronum!
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We are doing some kind of big chapters here.
Woohoo!
Yeah, we're at the end, closing in on the end of Prisoner of Azkaban. We have Anna back with us.
Hi, everyone.
And before we get to the really cool chapter that's ahead of us, entitled Cat, Rat, and Dog. So, before we do that, we've had a recent poll on our Twitter, and the question, cheering charms. Dan believes that it might be a wizard's answer to like prescription medications for depression and anxiety in the wizard world. Whereas Elizabeth thought maybe they're more of a malicious, you're forcing someone to feel an emotion and it's not genuine and it doesn't solve anything anyway.
I thought it was a really impressive question, something that I had never thought about in all the years of cheering charms.
The discussion that we had on the podcast, which was last week's episode, so if you want to check out the full debate, go listen to that one. But it surprised me on how like in-depth we got on cheering charms. Yeah. Like, it's just a random offshoot, like, piece of magic that we just delved into. So it was really cool. But anyway, the results of the poll were cheerful medicine equals good, got 25%. Fake cheer solves nothing, got 50% of the vote. And both, magic is tricky, got 25% of the vote. For the record, I'm in this poll having specifically being said to believe one thing. I actually voted for the both magic is tricky part because I feel like the answer is actually that. I
mean, that's usually what the answer is the medium.
Yeah.
I actually voted, I went back and forth. I hesitated. It took me a minute to cast my vote, but between fake cheer solves nothing and both magic is tricky, and ended up voting for fake cheer solves nothing.
Yeah, which I totally get that side.
Very specifically to fake cheer. But
yeah.
Like the idea of a cheering charm. But anyway.
Yeah, yeah. And what do you think the purpose of a cheering charm is?
I always, and I think that's how it's presented to us in the book, I always just kind of imagined it as kind of like a prank type thing.
Like a silly kind of thing on the side?
Yeah. I never thought of it in any sort of depth, like how you and Elizabeth went there. It was very much just like a throwaway thought to me that I was like, haha, I would probably shoot that at my friend when I was being obnoxious. But...
Yeah, it was just an interesting question. If you want to hear the full debate, like I said, go to the last episode, chapter 16. And, it was a big episode because we got into Trelawney's prediction and a whole bunch of other stuff. But anyway, we have one shout out to make as well. I'm just going to say the name here. It's ICKA, and the handle is at Jessica46554517. Okay. I hope I got all those numbers right. I really do. But
I'm sure you did.
Thank you for being so active on our Twitter, commenting on a lot of our stuff, liking a lot of our stuff. We really appreciate it. So thank you. And yeah, so this was a busy chapter, huh?
I mean, I've been waiting to get to these two chapters.
Yeah, you had these pegged for a long time.
Well, they're so Marauder heavy. Like, come on. Of course I wanted them.
So just briefly to run through, before we kind of get into the details of it, you finished the last chapter with the trio leaving Hagrid's hut, and...
R.I.P. Buckbeak.
Yes. You get the definitive axe swing that they hear off in the distance, and they're kind of broken up about it. They don't know how to react. Ron is trying to hold on to Scabbers as best he can, but lets him go. They chase Scabbers along into the shadow of the Whomping Willow, which is never good.
Never good.
They get attacked by the big black dog that's been stalking Harry this entire book. Drags Ron into the under the swinging branches into the tunnel.
Like how? But anyway, continue.
We'll get there. And drags him into the tunnel that's under the Whomping Willow, which who knew that was there? to the Shrieking Shack, where the duo now, Hermione and Harry, follow him in. And then an interesting scene kind of unfolds where Ron... And I don't know. I can't help but think of the movie because they did do this part really well. They did it almost word for word.
Disagree.
They said it word for word. It's like Harry, it's a trap. I'm seeing Rupert Grint go. He's an animagus. That part is what's ingrained in my head. But I know you have a bunch of issues with the entire.
Once again, Hermione is given Ron's best, most heroic line in the movies. But whatever. Well,
that's also a constant theme through the books and the movies, but. Ron has that line of like, it's a trap. And I thought of Admiral Akbar, and then it's, he's an animagus, and then you like almost swing over to the other side of the room, and there's Sirius Black standing there in all of his morbid look glory.
Oh, it's so much grosser in the book than the movie.
It's a vivid picture that they draw.
It is. This guy would scare the bejesus out of me.
Yeah. He looks the part that he's playing, doesn't he? Like, he looks like that serial killer
much so, yes.
Part. But anyway, they obviously have a heated interaction. And then, of all people, Lupin enters the equation and throws a curveball at everybody. So, first off, before we get into the Shrieking Shack of it all, because that's obviously where a lot of this chapter really lies.
Of course.
The big black dog part of it.
That scene is so much more intense than I remembered before rereading it.
Yes. That dog, or I guess we can now say in the non-spoiler section, Sirius, as the dog, is incredibly strong.
He's got to be ginormous.
Yeah.
For the things, I wrote down some of the things that stuck out to me about how intense this fight must have been. And so, like, as he's dragging Ron away, Harry was feeling as though his ribs were broken after the dog pushed him down to get to Ron. And then the dog's jaws fastened over an arm to start dragging. Harry seized a handful of the brute's hair. Like, the word brute, like, it just is such a good word choice. I loved it. And just, like, from there on, the pain caused is from the Whomping Willow. But, like...
To double down on what you just said, the dog, Sirius, dragged him into the, tunnel under the Whomping Willow, but Ron's leg gets caught on a
Well, he specifically
branch.
tried to hook it around the branch to stop,
And the dog pulls Ron off of it, which then...
had to have hurt.
Oh my gosh.
And that's another thing. I feel like Ron's pain in this chapter is so much more vivid than anything. I mean, obviously, they're not going to make, like, poor 13-year-old Rupert Grint, like...
Sure.
Green-tinged in pain. But, like, you feel Ron's pain in this chapter.
In the movie, you kind of laugh because Ron's, like, playing it up like he almost died. Kind of like Malfoy. Except this...
He actually
could have possibly...
very significantly injured.
Yeah, so it's... I mean, just the broken leg.
And how active Ron is in this chapter with the broken leg. I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. It all just, like, was much more vivid than I...
No, for sure. And just the force that it takes to break a leg, that dog has to be crazy, crazy strong. Yeah. And as you pointed out, too, large.
Yeah.
Like, it's got to be a very large, aggressive... And we've been told that.
Right.
But it's hard to, like, really envision... Like, when they say big black dog, I'm thinking, like, a large lab or something like that. So as Ron got dragged into this tunnel, Hermione whispers, I believe was the verb there, whispers, help, and Crookshanks immediately, like, just gets it and goes to the knot on the Whomping Willow, presses it.
Why do you think Crookshanks does that, though? Because, like, Crookshanks is friends with the dog. So she just witnessed them fighting with the dog. Why do you think he would help Harry and Hermione get into the tunnel? And
Great question. And I think that points to a larger view of Crookshanks as, I guess you can call him a character. It's a character, yeah.
I mean, he's pretty active in this book.
100%. But, so, we've kind of had discussions before about, like, Crookshanks doesn't seem to have any innate magical abilities, yet he was bought at a magical creature's shop.
Yeah.
Just because he doesn't, like, you know, go invisible or fly
Do
or
all the
whatever.
tricks and stuff that the mice were doing, yeah.
There might be a more invisible form of magic, like his level of understanding is almost like Hedwig's. Of, like, that innate, like, intuitive, like, you're bad, you're good, this is what...
Which maybe that's just magical cats in general, and that's maybe one of the reasons why cats are included in one of the pets that they can bring to school.
Mrs. Norris, it would explain Mrs. Norris a whole heck of a lot.
Yeah.
And that's the case, and, well, I guess we can get into this later, too, but just clearly he's having conversations with Sirius. Conversations, quote unquote.
I have more, I really, really want to deep dive
into the whole Sirius and Big Black Dog part of it.
and that, like, discussion and stuff, and maybe later.
Okay, fair enough. So, yeah, I just found it really interesting that Crookshanks not only, like, help is one thing, but knowing exactly what was needed to help in that specific time is just a little, like, hint that it's not a normal cat.
Hermione Granger would never own a normal cat.
True. Very true. Then we get to the Harry, it's a trap, he's an animagus line, which, again, I just have emblazoned in my head as Rupert Grint, which...
Fair enough.
Yeah.
It is a great, like, gasp-worthy moment.
Yes, 100%. And then the description of Sirius...
Here we go. A mass of filthy, matted hair hung to his elbows. If eyes hadn't been shining out of the deep, dark sockets, he might have been a corpse. The waxy skin was stretched so tightly over the bones of his face it looked like a skull. His yellow teeth were bared in a grin. It was Sirius Black.
That's such good descriptive writing.
Even when he speaks, the adjectives she uses for his voice, like the next line is Expelliarmus, he croaked. Like, every time he talks in this chapter, it's like he rasped. It's just...
I think they describe it as, it's as if he hasn't used that, I forget the verbiage which she uses, which is great, but it's like he hasn't used that voice in years.
I mean, who would he speak to?
Right. One thing I do want to kind of sit on for just a second is we've talked a couple of times about the notion of we're reading this book through essentially Harry's perspective. Mm-hmm. At times, we get it as like a collective trio perspective on something, because Ron and Hermione have generally similar viewpoints, whatever, what have you. Here, I feel like, is a really interesting example of it. When Sirius says, your father would have done the same for me, and Harry perceives it as a taunt.
Yeah.
And he goes after Sirius as if it is a taunt. And I think, knowing what we already know of the Marauders and how they were friends at school, you can see how Sirius is, like, at least in his point of view, being 100% genuine. Like,
right.
No,
he doesn't
James
think anything
wouldn't.
of a line like that because he knows in the deepest core of him, James Potter would have done that for him.
And I think we've already had stories of just that. You get the Snape history and stuff like that.
Oh my god, I'm so excited for the Snape story.
So you get, you get little tastes and tidbits of their history as friends, which Harry seems to just completely ignore at different points in this book. I get that he's in a state.
Well,
he's in a state. And
also, how much... I mean, hearing from a group of teachers while you're hidden behind a Christmas tree sopping in butterbeer that, they were best friends. I mean, yes, he knows the depth of his friendship with Ron and Hermione, and we know at this point that that was the same depth that Sirius and James have, but at the end of the day, the most important thing to Harry, and like you said, is from his perspective, all anybody really can see is that Sirius Black turned his back on that friendship. Like, I feel like what they all think Sirius Black did just automatically cancels out any sort of friendship. So I think anybody would kind of perceive that as a taunt. Even Lupin probably would have perceived it as a taunt in that moment.
Yeah. It's just an interesting kind of, like, clearly the character is perceiving one thing,
right,
and the other character on the other end of the conversation, I seems to truly have a different perspective on how this conversation is going.
Right.
Of like, what I'm telling you is a fact. What am I getting all this blowback for? Like,
I wish we could have the perspective of Ron or Hermione or both in this scene, because can you imagine watching your best friend go through the very dark things that Harry goes through in these few moments? I mean, if I say I was Hermione and you were Harry, and I was just like standing huddled in a corner watching you with your wand pointed over the heart of this mass murder, like I don't know what I would do. It's a lot. It's a very intense.
Well, you set me up to my next question.
Awesome.
Almost exactly. Of Harry points his wand at Sirius's heart. How exactly would he follow through on that?
Yeah.
At this point in his schooling, I'm not aware of anything that he would have learned that would cause this adult wizard
Right.
immediate peril, like immediate mortal danger.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, yes, I think a lot of things to the heart, never a great thing.
Sure.
But
Yeah, that's
what
true.
does he know? I think in the, coming book, he learns some things. But, yeah, I am with you at this point. What exactly was he going to do? What spell does he know at this point that's going to kill somebody?
And I don't know that he knows the answer to that. I just think he's in a hot flash of emotion.
He's in a very hairy place right now. Harry feels all his feels, and who can blame him? This is a pretty big feel.
Lupin enters the occasion. And I love Lupin because obviously we know how intelligent and how smart he is. Mm-hmm. And you can see him start piecing everything together as to what this could potentially mean. And it's just really interesting to kind of see him put the puzzle pieces together. So he comes to the conclusion, essentially, that Sirius and Peter must have switched places. And
so all that wordless communication that goes on between Sirius and Lupin as he's piecing it all together, and he'll just say like a quick broken phrase as they're like staring at each other and making eye contact, and Sirius just kind of nods. Or friendship had to have been so deep. And I mean, like, maybe this stands out to me because I could tell you something that you would laugh at enormously about me. I may or may not be a Wolfstar follower. You don't even know what Wolfstar is, do you?
Wolfstar?
Yes. It is the fan fiction nickname for those people who ship Lupin and Sirius.
Sirius is in the star?
Yeah, Sirius is the star and Wolf is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, the fact that they can still wordlessly communicate after not speaking for 12 years and like thinking so poorly of the other, I just love this moment.
But meanwhile, like, again, the trio's just sitting there and like, what is going on right now?
Such confusion. Which, how badly do you wish? I know we've spoken a lot, particularly in Chamber of Secrets, about how we wish we could remember our first reactions to things. This is the first time, oh my god, how I wish I could remember, because at this point we just, know so much about these characters that's so ingrained in us. Was I brokenhearted when Lupin reached out and embraced Sirius, as a brother? Did I think in this moment, did Lupin go to the dark side? Was I just super confused and like flipping through pages rampantly because Lupin could not fall from the pedestal that I had already placed him on.
Right. Which is, admittedly, and I think this, of all the things we've argued and debated and gone back and forth on, I think of all the things we could have possibly debated, this is the one universal truth. I think everybody has put Lupin on quite the pedestal by this point already.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, I can't think of one reason why you wouldn't have by this point.
Unless you're like Draco Malfoy.
I mean, we've nitpicked. I know I've nitpicked, well, his lessons could have gone really bad. They just didn't.
I nitpicked that.
And you can nitpick that, but that's admittedly a nitpick. They didn't go badly.
Right.
So it's like, anyway. Yeah, we can go on a Lupin Love Fest. But, so, you know who's not going on a Lupin Love Fest is Ron in this chapter.
This is the second most disappointing moment for Ron in this entire series for me.
So, Hermione comes out with this pained, like, we trusted you,
I trusted you.
I trusted you. I kind of let a lot go, and then she gets into what she meant by that. She explains what she meant by that. And
she kept it as a vault. She didn't even tell Ron or Harry.
Yeah. No,
That's
she
huge.
kept that very close to the vest, which is substantial when you think of all that they talk about. But I do love, I don't want to say it mocking or like taken, I don't want to even say that. It's like, because all that's way too harsh for what Lupin actually does in response. But he kind of like pokes. That's what I want to go with. He pokes at Hermione a little bit by saying like, Hermione, you're a little substandard here. You only got 1 out of 3 correct.
I know,
Which
I love it.
I love that too.
That moment so much.
Yeah, he just kind of pokes at her a little bit and was like, I'm disappointed in you right now. You're only like a third correct. Which
Not at all up to your usual standard.
Which, to him is playful banter. To her, it's like a deep cashing insult. It's this deep mortal wound that she has now suffered. But anyway, yeah.
It's also a deep cut because she is like a further slash in her in the betrayal that, that she kept the secret and now he's making fun of her in her mind. Like, who?
Yeah.
Hermione not in a good place right now.
Well, once Hermione makes it very clearly known to those in the room that don't know, which that would be Harry and Ron, Lupin, I think, makes to go towards Ron, doesn't he, at some point?
Because
to help the
Ron,
leg?
grimaces in pain again, or something, yeah.
And then Ron's exact quote is, "Get away from me, werewolf." And...
Poor Lupin, I just want to hug him.
Well, And this might be another example of me taking this, like, way too deep on things, but Ron, you've known this man for a year now. You've been in close contact with him for a year now. He's saved you at least on one occasion. He's physically saved you once. He's gotten you out of trouble multiple times. He's helped you in many ways.
Helped your best friend in enormous ways.
In enormous ways. And now you're acting like he cannot even come close to you very quickly based on one fact. Granted, it is a fact, and it's a big one.
So my thought, and I know we've given Molly Weasley a lot of love on this podcast, that she deserves 100%. Molly Weasley brings her children up. As much as the blood traders, as the Weasleys are, Molly is lovely, she's got a lot of stereotypes in her that she has raised her children with. And I think of all the kids, Percy and Ron took them to heart the most. And I think Ron in particular is the biggest. And obviously we hear the most from Ron.
Can you bottle that? And I want you to really expound on it in the spoiler.
Sure.
Is that possible? Because I like that.
Yeah.
I like where you were going with it. So I kind of want you to expound on it.
Yeah.
But I feel like it will dip into spoilers.
Works for me.
So, but yeah, no, is it like, obviously werewolves are a thing and they are known to be a thing. So
They're a dangerous thing, as much as we love Lupin.
anyway, we can get into more of the whole, but the discriminatory...
I think it applies.
Reaction.
This is pretty darn discriminatory. Like you said, he knows all of these things about Lupin, and one fell swoop, he learns one thing
Yes.
about him, and it's completely different.
That's what caught me.
Yeah.
So we can discuss it kind of in future conversations, but yeah, it just caught me as like, whoa. That accelerated to 10 real quick.
Which is so Ron, too.
That is true. Well, and again, he's having quite a night. So,
Poor baby.
but yeah, we also learned that the staff is aware of Lupin being a werewolf. Not all of them were super supportive. I would love to have the breakdown of...
I had that thought, too. I want to know, obviously, I'm sure we all know one professor who is not supportive.
Well...
But Yeah, I would like the breakdown as well.
I don't think that's even a secret. I don't think that's a spoiler. I think he's been poking.
Doesn't he even say that?
He literally tried to out him in a lesson, which is how Hermione figured this whole thing out to begin with.
I hate him so much. Sorry.
So yes, we obviously know one that I'm assuming was quite vocal in defiance of him being hired. But, I wonder what McGonagall's true opinion of it was. I wonder what Flitwick's was. It would have been interesting to hear kind of the other teacher's point of view.
And I would also be interested to know, how much of their view would be based on the fact, McGonagall might have a different view than others because she taught him. She already went through his time.
How do you think that process went? Do you think Dumbledore... I'm assuming Dumbledore just made the call on his own because he's Dumbledore and he's whatever, I do what I want.
Board of Governors wasn't involved in that one.
But sure, absolutely. But do you think teachers hear of it and they're like, hey, or they probably don't even, does Dumbledore just tell them after the fact? Just interesting how, the staff knows is kind of an interesting detail that they threw out there. So we found out this little minor detail about Lupin, he helped write the Marauders map, which...
Nonchalance.
It just comes out in such a, he's like, oh yeah, I saw this name. I saw you guys go down to Hagrid's hut on the Marauders map. And Harry's like, how did you know about the Marauders map? And he's like, I kind of wrote it. I'm Moony.
And he just, flicks it away. He, in my mind, he's, rolling his eyes.
Whatevs.
Yeah, I helped write it. Moving on.
Yeah. He's like... just a minor piece of magic, just a minor piece of...
I love it.
Yeah, whatever, it's fine. And then he's like... He mentions the cloak. I forget exactly how he mentions Harry under the cloak. He's like...
Because he says he assumed that they would be sneaking down under the invisibility cloak to visit Hagrid, and that's when he says, you know about the cloak? The number of times I watched James disappear underneath it.
Of all the times Harry has been... first year stupid, second year dumb, third year thick, whatever it was. This was a dumb question. He was friends with James. He was good friends with James. Why wouldn't he know about the cloak?
Give the boy a break. This is a lot happening to them right now.
The Marauders map question was legit.
Yeah.
That legit. This one, I'm like, really? You couldn't piece that one together in 2 seconds? Anyway. I digress. But it was a cool little, scene where
it's a question
just like...
It's a legit question if Lupin doesn't know he has James's cloak.
That's fair. Yeah, I guess Lupin would just assume that it got past. But I would assume Lupin assumes...
Well, right.
That,
Lupin obviously is good at making connections. But I'm just saying.
Right. No, yeah, that's a fair point. And then, to your point about what were our reactions when we first read this book... The reveal of Scabbers is Peter Pettigrew as a mic drop moment towards the end of this chapter. I can't tell you exactly how I felt, but this has got to be one of the bigger twists.
Yeah.
It's a massive twist.
Who thinks a rat is a human that's supposed to be dead?
Even if you were putting together, well, Scabbers is clearly something, because I mentioned it 8,000 times. Even if you piece that together, fine. But I don't think you had him being Peter Pettigrew. That's a twist of epic proportion. So I don't know how exactly I reacted, except to immediately turn the page and read the next chat.
I'm sure that's what I was going. Me, when I was a little older, I feel like my mind would have started whirring and thinking of all the clues that might have been given to us, like the missing toe and things like that. But
or at the pet shop right at the beginning when the person's like, that's a really old rat.
Or the things that Scabbers really got scared of. And it's I'd like to think that I started thinking of all those things, but like you said, I'm pretty sure 13-year-old Anna was just what happens next?
Yeah, that was a curveball. That was a real curveball back in the day. But yeah, there's a lot going on in this chapter, and I think it's time to go to the spoiler section.
I think so. Probably,
and kind of dive a little bit more into it. So enjoy Hermione's wonderful
cockroach quote, and we'll be right back with the spoilers. You foul, loathsome, evil little cockroach!
All right, we are back with the spoiler section of Chapter 17, Cat, Rat, and Dog. And we're just going to pick up with the Molly Weasley thought that you had earlier, because I just thought it was an interesting take that we haven't heard before on Molly. So.
Yeah, like, I'm not saying, like, I want to, like, hate on Molly or anything like that. I wouldn't want our Molly to, hate me forever. But when we talk about Ron's reaction to the werewolf and discrimination and stuff like that, it just hit me like he was raised with a lot of stereotypes from Molly. And like other examples I was kind of thinking of is like, later on when we meet Bill, she wants to cut Bill's hair. She wants him to lose the dragon earring. She, I think it's in Goblet of Fire, when she sends Hermione less chocolate because she, like, believes all of the different Rita Skeeter articles. She was, taken in by Lockhart. She's just a lot more, like, she puts importance on the type of kind of, like, gossip magazines, I feel like.
Okay.
And then, like, I feel like maybe the biggest example is how she treats Fred and George and the importance she puts on becoming prefect and head boy. And all of that changes all of a sudden when they start making money with the joke shop, and all of a sudden, like, oh, it's all wonderful, and it's okay they didn't get
business.
there.
They're businessmen.
Right. Yeah, so I just think, she puts more importance on those types of things, and Ron just kind of takes that in, he remembers all of these things that she taught him. We all do. We
Sure.
we remember the things our parents taught us. It becomes part of us to a certain extent, whether we want it to or not. Percy, I think, is the other biggest example. And we've talked a lot about Percy and you thinking he wants the power, and I was more towards, like, his importance of money, and I think he gets that from Molly.
Yeah.
So...
Can I ask a question, though, since we're in a werewolf outing chapter, and the whole reason we kind of got on that note was Ron reacting so aggressively to, oh my gosh, you're a werewolf, get away from me.
Right.
Spoiler, Bill gets entangled with a werewolf at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And no, he doesn't get bit, and it's not a full change, per se. But there are side effects to his entanglement with the werewolf. Fenrir, right?
Yep, Greyback.
Yeah, so how do you think that might alter their... I mean, obviously they've known Lupin for a couple of years now at that point.
Right, I was going to say, and that's the good thing about the Weasleys is... they're not unwilling to let go of, those stereotypes that lead to discrimination, they're willing to change their thinking pretty quickly compared to a lot of other people that might have the same discriminatory tendencies towards werewolves. They're not going to be like Umbridge, like holding on to that, making laws, making it harder for them to live. Imagine that. You get to know someone from a different background and then you learn to accept them. Growth. It's a beautiful thing. Who knew? That's amazing. It would interest me to know how Molly would have I mean, she loves her children. Her children are her heart, so I don't think there would have been any awfulness. But, like, say they didn't know Lupin. Say Greyback had actually bitten Bill. What would Molly and Ron's reaction have been had Bill become a full-blown werewolf? I don't know that they go full-on excommunication from the family. Agreed. But they're willing to do things like that. Look at what they do to Percy. And, like, Percy brings that upon himself. That's a lot of Percy self-inflicted. I know, I agree. But, like, they write him off. Yeah. I would say they wouldn't excommunicate, but they would treat him differently. He would be an ostracized member of the, like, you go sit at the table over there away from us. I don't think Arthur would. Arthur, Fred, George, Charlie, they've got a lot more openness. They have seen, well, not necessarily Fred and George at this point in the books, but Charlie and Arthur have been out, and they've experienced a lot more of the world through their professions. Right. So they've probably come in contact with a bunch of different people in a bunch of different ways. Arthur's constantly working with muggles. Right. Charlie's in Romania doing his dragon thing. So, like, yes, agreed. I could see them being a little bit more, like, tolerant. And so it's also a testament, like, clearly Arthur's not going to love Molly if he doesn't see the part of her that is going to be like, you know, once they experience things just like Arthur, Charlie are, they grow.
I don't know how.
So really, it's good that they got Lupin into their lives before Bill goes through what he goes 100%. Through. But
I could see. I don't know how you feel about this, but I could see Charlie being the type of person like Sirius or like James that's like, my brother, who I've known all this time, just became a werewolf. Like, I could see Charlie being like, how can I be there for him still?
Yeah.
Like,
Charlie would go Animagus.
I think he would at least attempt it, or at least find some way to still be like, how can I help you through this? His thing is, for lack of a better term, Fantastic Beasts. Yeah. So it's like, that's his gig. So, like, I could see him finding some way to still be involved with Bill, even when that time comes.
And I think Fred and George would too. Like, Fred and George are... They pick at people, but they're always involved in their people's lives.
I think... we'll get to your rebuttals here in a second, but I think one thing... Anna likes to message me after every episode she hears.
It's very stream of consciousness.
Very much so. And
I couldn't do it with very many people who don't know me as well as Jan does.
One of the things that she picked at me for was a take I had on Fred and George. And in response to the conversation that we're having, and that, I feel like Fred and George are an interesting character study in their own right throughout the series. Because they start off as these immature, pranksters that play a lot of pranks and make a lot of jokes.
There's still a lot of immaturity in them until the very end of the series.
But, that's my point, is you see them grow and mature throughout the series, maybe the most completely of almost any other character. Like, you see a big growth point, and you can almost target it, like book 1 to book 2 to book 3 to book 4, It's a really cool, interesting arc that they have. So to your point, as they grow up and as they kind of get more of that worldly experience, I think they would jump right with Charlie and like, how can we do this? Like, how can we make this work?
There would be some werewolf jokes. There would be some raw meat jokes. There would be,
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But Furry Little Problem would be very them. But yeah, agreed. As soon as I think Charlie would be the one to come up with the Animagus idea, and Fred and George would definitely jump on and be like, yes, we will do that with you.
Now that you said that, I can't not ask, what do you think they would then become? All three of them. Fred, George, and Charlie.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I can't not ask that question after you just posed that idea. I can't not ask it.
I mean, like, I feel like it's anybody's mind is immediately first thought going to think Charlie would become a dragon, but like
that's
that
aggressive.
Seems really intense.
That's aggressive.
Yeah. So,
and I'm sure it's extraordinarily difficult to do that kind of transformation, unless he's like a little toothless or something like that, like a little baby dragon.
I mean, I definitely think Charlie is going to be something. He would be one of the bigger animals that would be keeping the werewolf in charge.
Well, you got you have examples of Sirius becoming clearly a large black
bear.
dog.
I think Charlie would be a bear.
Bear is an interesting option. Yeah. That's reasonable. It's a reasonable option.
He's like brawny. He's like, but he'd be like the Teddy Roosevelt bear that like looks big and but then like I could go and like hug him.
I like that one. Bear works. I would have said like maybe like because of the brawny muscular version, like more of like a gorilla or something like that, like a big...
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Obviously, we're going like
the twins is hard for me. I do think they would be different animals, and I think that would be important.
Different but similar, or just completely different.
Fred would be a bigger animal than George would be.
Interesting.
But not significantly different. And I say that because, we've talked a lot about, it always being Fred and George and like Fred being the kind of like instigator. So I think that's why. I don't know if JK ever told us, but in my mind, Fred is the older of the two.
By like a minute.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
like something like that.
Right. I don't know.
I feel like even if they were different, I feel like they would still have to be like, they'd still have to pair well.
They'd be complementary.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it's like you'd have to almost pick like whatever symbiotic relationship some animals have. But then you'd also like, would their focus be to help Charlie like wrangle in a potential Bill, or would it just be like
I feel
their
like they
own?
would need. Well, they don't have a choice in their animagus form. We can go down this rabbit hole. I want to go down this rabbit hole in the next episode. But I did a lot of research into animagus.
That's a whole other,
Yeah. I don't know why koala keeps coming to my mind. But
Koala?
I love koalas.
I love koalas too. That is so random.
I know. I don't know. Anyway.
We should pause this discussion right after koalas. And we should get back to it. You're right. We should get back to it when we get back to the whole animagus thing. Koalas. Unbelievable. This conversation has gotten bonkers, but this
book is about to get bonkers.
This book is about to get bonkers. This chapter is really where this starts to spiral in some crazy things.
Yeah. Lots of explanations needed from here on out.
It's like you almost are like just getting up to that top of the roller coaster before you just like scream down.
I like that comparison a lot. I like that a lot.
And it just more and more and more comes out of it. And you're just like, oh, this is crazy. So this is that chapter. So I couldn't say that when I was introducing the chapter because you don't know really what chapters are coming next. But
I would just
crazy.
like to say, one of my biggest takeaways from this chapter is how much I wish I could have been friends with the Marauders. I mean, like, wouldn't it have just been so much fun? So, like,
I have heard that take from this person.
I know.
so
say
many
it
times.
a lot, but, like, it would be so much fun. So, like, we talked in the non-spoiler section about, like, Lupin's casual, like, throwing out of, like, yeah, I helped write it. Like, he's just got this casual brilliance to him. And then Sirius in this chapter is just, like, such a total drama king. Like, oh my god, he does not help himself in this chapter to not appear to be a psycho at all. Like, he just, like, has these one-liners. Only one will die tonight. Like, such a drama queen. And then James is just hot, and we all know my love of James. But, like, it just would have been fun to be friends with them at Hogwarts. I wish I was Lily Evans. It's fine.
I'm quite certain they were a fun group to be around. And they were kind of the it group, really. Yeah. I mean, they were the group that everybody kind of, like, looked up to outside of certain potions professor. So, yeah, but
I
mean...
made a real nasty face at him, you guys.
So, I mean, they had everything. They had everything you want. They had the athletic prominence. They had the academic prominence. They had the quick wit. The always ready with a joke.
Friendship, too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so close. Not very many people... I mean, people have friends. But that level of friendship when you're a
Are you
teenager,
telling me Dean and Seamus are not bros for life?
Of course they are. Dean and Seamus have their own special relationship, Dan. People are jealous of that.
I don't know why. I don't know why, but I thought you were going to say like they had like matching tattoos. I don't know why you were going to go that route. They probably do. They probably do.
It's some sort of shamrock soccer combination. You're like the West Ham logo with the shamrock.
Maybe we can roll that. Sure.
You had canon.
Yeah, so this book kind of gets crazy, and we're getting down to it, which is crazy to think about too. That we're nearing the end of this book, so there's still a lot to cover, but we've already covered a lot.
Yes.
Any comments, concerns, things you have from previous chapters?
Okay, so my one big thought that I would just like to throw out there is I'm really grateful to Elizabeth that she was the guest on the last two chapters, because she was much kinder to you than I would have been. Even listening to them, I was getting really upset. So I'm really glad I didn't have to be on those chapters. I know.
She yells at me frequently. You think I'm kidding when I'm saying she's the Hermione yelling cockroach at me. You think I'm kidding.
Only sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But even more so than that, and you already alluded to this, I was really upset when you were accusing Fred and George of stealing from Honeydukes.
not saying they were robbing them at one point. I'm just saying they were like nicking a couple things here and there.
Because they wouldn't just be nicking a couple things. The amount of times just in these books alone, and they had years before the books we're reading, you know, where they had the Marauders map. The amount of stuff they bring back from Honeydukes, the often-ness that they go and take things from Honeydukes. Yes, I guess technically you could call it stealing, but I firmly believe I am 100% in agreement that they take up a collection. I think I think there is, in my mind, there is a jar that just constantly sits in the Gryffindor common room. It's labeled Quidditch parties. And when you have a spare galleon, you throw it in the jar, and that is what Fred and George use, and they just leave that money in a pile in Honeydukes.
I think that's a stretch, but it would answer my comeback to you of that was put together really last minute. Because
that's why there's just a jar that always sits there. And they just, you know.
I'm not saying they're awful people. I'm not saying they're like burglars.
No, I just like I
was saying. Like,
I wish you could have seen.
They're also
me.
kids too.
I was like almost shaking. I was like getting so upset that you were saying that they would take that
they're
much.
Kids. Kids do dumb things sometimes that I'm sure they look back on as their businessmen selves. Own wizard.
Weasley's Wizard Weasley.
Yes, I got tongue-tied on that real bad. But yes.
Easy to do.
Yes, thank you. But owning their own joke shop later, I'm sure they were like, hey, kid, I know what you're doing. Drop it and get out of here.
Online, that stack of stuff you think we're going to give you? We're not.
Exactly. I'm sure they're now well aware that they're former mischievous. That's what I'm saying. They were young and they did dumb stuff.
I just don't. I think they have enough of Molly ingrained in them that they would have left. At least maybe the money that they leave doesn't cover the full amount of stuff that they take, but I firmly believe they do not just take.
After I said it, now I'm having the image in my head of anybody for that matter, not just them, like robbing someplace at one point. Like, what do you say? What do you do with that? I don't know. No, that was not my intended impression to put out there. Just saying they're kids. They do some not
they
great
hold
stuff
the wands
sometimes.
to the ear like Bellatrix does to Neville, and they break the eardrums like Helena Bonham Carter
aggressive.
did to. That's what happened.
I know, that's super aggressive.
I know.
That's super aggressive.
Anyway.
Anything else you had?
No, those are my only
Oh, that was the only one that you were really coming at me for?
Yeah.
She's being nice now. And our book wrap-up, I'm sure she'll be much more feisty.
Anytime we actually talk about Trelawney, it's just going to come out. We're not going to do it today, guys.
We're not going to do it today. But, yeah, this chapter, as big as it was, it only gets bigger from here, which is weird because the next chapter was only like 9 pages.
I was so surprised
like loaded.
by that because it's so good.
It's so good. So I think we're going to call it here for Cat, Rat, and Dog, Chapter 17. And we will be back next week with Chapter 18, Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. So it's kind of a big chapter. It's a big little chapter. It's a big content, little page. So we'll be back with the Marauders themselves and that explanation next week. So please join us. And for Anna.
Bye, guys. It was fun.
I'm Dan. Thank you for all the Twitter and Instagram interactions. We really appreciate it. So keep those coming and let us know what you think.
Find me on Instagram.
Yes. Anna's doing a great job with our Instagram account. So thank you for that. So we will see you next week. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hogwarts a Pod.